Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. There was so much going on in last night's game, Tony. I can't wait to talk about it all.
I'm Frank Isola. Sorry about that. Tony fell asleep when it was 4-4. They called me in from the panel.
Wow, that's a lot of pitches for him, though, Frank. That's a lot of pitches for Tony.
That's a late start. A 10-20 start.
I mean, you know, there was betting here in San Francisco, over and under on some of his old basketball pals from the 1970s, as whether he would make tip-off. So, you know, things are going pretty well. Absolutely. Welcome to PTI. Tony's off somewhere reading about last night's game, I guess. So I am pleased to be joined by our great friend from the New York Daily News, Mr. Frank Isola.
Believe it or not, that's my family cheering. I needed to bring them here to cheer for me.
We begin, of course, Frank, with last night's Game 1 Warriors beatdown of the defending champion Cavaliers here in NoCal. Any telling of last night's story has to begin with Kevin Durant's brilliant all-around play, highlighted by 38 points, 8 assists, and no turnovers. But there was also the matter of 31 Warriors assists to a finals record low 4 turnovers, and Cleveland's unthinkably wretched defense. Frank, anything you see last night leads you to want to reassess your original thoughts on the series?
You know, I kept thinking all throughout the game, the Cleveland Cavaliers really missed Harrison Barnes. It was a little bit different last year when they were letting Barnes shoot these wide-open jumpers. Now you're adding Kevin Durant. Think about it. Last year, Harrison Barnes had 65 points in 7 games. Durant had 38. He makes him that much more lethal. And look at the way that Steph Curry played. A little bit different when he's in their 2 option. But I do expect not only to LeBron to play better. Remember, 9 field goals, 8 turnovers, not good enough. But what about Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, guys coming off the bench, Darren Williams, Kyle Korver? They didn't do anything.
You know what they were?
They got to play better.
They were 1 for 14, Frank, right. Those guys you just mentioned. And that was the first bucket of the game, J.R. Smith. They were 0 for 14.
Yeah, and by the way, JaVale McGee, who everyone criticizes coming in, JaVale McGee outscored J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson, Darren Williams, and Kyle Korver 4-3, and he only played 5.5 minutes.
5 minutes.
But come on, Mike, you were there. You got to figure Cleveland defensively has to play better, and I think they have to do a better job controlling the pace. If Golden State gets out in transition, it could be a quick series.
Well, that was turnovers, Frank, and Cleveland can't have 20 turnovers that lead to 21 easy points. How about all those dunks? There's several things Cleveland has to change, and I'm not going to reassess anything. As a matter of fact, I feel sort of more entrenched in my original position that this is going to be a 6 or 7 game series because the Cavaliers had to be embarrassed last night. I mean, they come out there and they get throttled, and LeBron has 8 turnovers, which is not going to happen. They're going to rededicate themselves. They're going to figure out that they can't just fan out defensively to guard the three-point line. They're going to have to guard in the paint as well, since that's where the Warriors, particularly Durant, just killed them. But some things did happen last night that make me, give me a little bit of pause. Let's go back to Kevin Durant. He can also be left defensively on LeBron James to a degree. He's not going to embarrass himself like 99.9% of the other guys in the league. So, but I think, look, they're going to play with much better effort. The guys who were scoreless are not going to be scoreless. And the Warriors tend to get loosey-goosey after a great game with the ball. It's not bad shooting that undoes the Warriors. It's turnovers, and they're not going to have as few as 4 again.
And I know Draymond Green rebounds and Klay Thompson defends. Here's what worries me if I'm Cleveland. Draymond and Klay Thompson go a combined 5 for 28, 1 of 10 on three-pointers, and they still cruise to a victory. Now, you remember 2 years ago, the Cavs left Iguodala wide open all series. He was the MVP. Last year, they leave Harrison Barnes wide open, and he ends up being the GOAT of the series. Can they do something like that with Klay Thompson in the series?
That's what they're going to have to do, Frank. Let's face it. They're going to have to overload that defense, however they do it, gimmick, double down, whatever, on Kevin Durant, and pay special attention to Steph Curry, even more of it. And that's going to leave Klay Thompson 3 for 16 last night and struggling in the playoffs. Klay is going to get his chance to either shoot his way out of this or be closer to Harrison Barnes. But that's going to be an intriguing decision they have.
All right, 13 straight wins in the playoffs for the Warriors, and that's 11 straight with Mike Brown on the bench. And yet there is still talk that Steve Kerr may return to the sidelines perhaps as early as Game 2, according to ESPN's Mark Spears. Kerr, of course, is still suffering the side effects from multiple back surgeries, and he's scheduled to travel with the team to Cleveland. But at this point, doesn't it make more sense, Michael, just to keep things the way that they are?
Well, this is the way they are. The way they are is those two guys managing this without ego.
Yep,
exactly. In a sport characterized by, yes, a lot of things great, but also great ego. I mean, I talked to both of them, and I spent a long time with Mike Brown a couple of days ago on the eve of the opening of the series. And he thought, he told me that he would encourage Steve to try to coach game one. And he doesn't care. I said, how emotionally is this for you, Mike, if Steve pops up later in the series? And Mike Brown said, I hope he pops up game one. And there was consideration of that. But Steve apparently had a setback on Wednesday and did not feel he could do that. He wants to be symptom-free, or at least greatly reduced, before he goes out there if Sunday. But as you know, Frank, I mean, that's 2 days away. You got 2 full days, and these symptoms pop up. And the amount of pain Steve Kerr is in when he tries to go out there on the floor is enormous. And so I still don't know, but I think they'll be fine with whatever they decide, even if it's at the last second.
You know what? I think the fact that he's traveling with the team, that's great. He's in the locker room before games and at halftime. And like you said, there's no ego involved. Mike Brown, right after the game, when he talked about Kevin Durant getting off to the good start, he brought up the point that Steve wanted us to get the ball to him early, let him try to get established. And, you know, Mike Brown and Steve Kerr have a great relationship going all the way back to San Antonio. Mike Brown is going to be a head coach again in this league. You can tell that he's preparing for it. He's on the Mike Wilbon diet. Both of you guys look incredibly slim. He looks a lot better.
I'm not as thin as he is, but thank you, Frank.
Right? He looks really good. And
he looks great. He's ready to coach again, too. He will be.
And that's the thing. You know, Steve Kerr, it's not Steve Kerr thinking, I need to get out there. This needs to be about me, or Mike Brown is saying that.
That's right.
And that's what makes it work.
And Steve, still communicates with the players in person at halftime, before games, after games, via text if he needs to. But, you know, Steve Kerr's I think they could get a bump, though, Frank. They could get a bump up if Steve Kerr is on that floor before game 2 on Sunday afternoon here in Oakland.
Yeah.
Adam Silver made his annual Commissioner's State of the League address before game 1. And while there were any number of topics to cover, the sexy one was what to do about college one-and-dones. An increasing number of college presidents and athletic directors lament how fraudulent it is for so-called student athletes. And NBA folks lament how ill-prepared these kids are for pro basketball. Silver said, quote, my sense is that one and done is not working for anyone, close quote. Frank, what do you read into Adam Silver's comments?
You know what I think? Timing is everything. And to me, this was a bad time to say this, because a couple hours later, Mr. One and Done himself, Kevin Durant, went out and put up 38 points in the NBA Finals game. And then LeBron James, who didn't even go to college for a year, was the second best player out on the court. You can make the argument, obviously LeBron's the best player in the league, Durant's the second best. I'm sorry. I understand the NBA wants to use college basketball as a developmental league. It's great in terms of marketing. You know, when Patrick Ewing and Grant Hill went to college, it seemed like they were there for 8 years. Everyone knew who they were coming into the league. What I'm doing, you want to forget about one and done? Just allow kids to come out right out of high school, and then if you do go to college, make them stay a minimum of 2 years.
The baseball rule, Frank. I don't think anybody, you can't find any real argument against the baseball rule.
That's right.
And it would solve a lot of problems if baseball, if basketball owners and players get themselves in a room and not come out until they adopt that rule. Short of that, though, because the difference is baseball college players are not marketed. Nobody knows who they are. And basketball players become very large stars even with one abbreviated season. I think we're looking, if every party will be so much better served for 2. And again, I am of the opinion, this goes deep cultural roots for me. We, African Americans, by and large, are the only people on the face of the earth, a small pocket of them, trying to convince somebody that education, higher education, is an impediment to success. I'm not buying that garbage at any time in my life until I die. It doesn't mean there aren't some high school players like LeBron and Kobe who come out there and you look at me and go, oh my God. But the trail is littered with guys who come out of high school and didn't make it and have nothing to show for it now. And Kobe and LeBron be the first to tell you, because they both could have gone to college and succeeded anywhere. But I think this needs to go 2. I hope it doesn't go high school. And really, I hope it's the baseball rule you talk about.
Yeah, and look at the international players. Dirk Nowitzki, Manu Ginobili, guys that are going to the Hall of Fame. Look at Kristaps Porzingis playing professionally over in Europe as a 15-year-old. They're not going to college. If the players want to go to college, they'll go. I think they just have to go either right out of high school or 2 years in college. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
All right, Adam Silver also addressed an issue that, quite frankly, is becoming tiresome. Of course, we're talking about rest yet again. The commissioner has this crazy notion that the best players should play in marquee games, and that if they're going to sit out a game, do it at home, not on the road. Adam Silver, however, does appear to be onto something when he says he wants to reduce the number of back-to-backs and believes he can do that by getting teams to free up more dates at their respective arenas. Michael, are you on board with this solution?
Yeah. And the network partners have to deal with that, too. You can't have nights, and they've gotten rid of it pretty much with an exclusive 1 or 2 game schedule. You can't have it because then you back up the schedule and you wind up with more back-to-back. Sorry, Turner and my bosses at ESPN and ABC, but that's the fact. And so, look, I even talked to Adam Silver last week, Frank, and I bring up all the time, would anyone ever consider shortening the season to 76 games? And no, and Adam says, quite frankly, while he's not against it personally, there's no data to suggest to anyone that would help avoid the injuries. But what was interesting when he said that, how about this, a less radical but still perhaps radical solution, how about if games were 40 minutes instead of 48, and you reduce the number of minutes on a player of the wear and tear, and there might be data coming to suggest it could help. Again, just a suggestion. It's not like Adam Silver's, gone and proposed it. But when he mentioned it, I thought, wow, that could take the place of those of us who want the schedule reduced by number of games.
You see, if you're going to name drop, you got to give information like that. Now, that's interesting, 40 minutes. And when you think about the international game, it's 40 minutes. College basketball is 40 minutes. By the way, college basketball should also play 4 quarters, get rid of first half and second half. The way they do it is not the right way. But it's not the craziest idea, but I do think, the league has been 48 minutes for so long. What about all the records?
I know.
You're kind of dramatically changing it, right?
That's the snag. Frank, players and records are tied mostly to baseball, but the ones that are in basketball are tied to things like number of points, 100. Nobody's going to approach that anyway. But even sort of, Kobe's 81 mark, if you got 8 fewer minutes, nobody's going to get to that. And some of the points per game, Jordan stuff, they'd have to give it up. I don't think they would. But I think the things that Adam is proposing, where you can get rid of the back-to-backs, you're already starting the season earlier. They're doing something about this. And rest these players at home. I think that's the most important part. Rest them, then don't be frauds about it. Sit them down at home, but they can't get rest at home.
Remember one thing about rest. The Golden State Warriors rested their players for a game against San Antonio. Since that game, they've won 28 of their next 29 games. So they're going to say, you know what? We know what we're doing.
We're taking a break. But coming up, what's the word for that stare? Is that a stare? that KD gave Rihanna last night.
It was a pickup line. And Russell Westbrook let everybody know that he was not watching last night's game. What's the word for that? He was resting. Forced rest, I think.
Pardon the Interruption is presented by Captain Morgan. Live like a captain. Please drink responsibly. Part of Happy Hour.
Kevin Durant is being blank when he says he doesn't remember staring down Rihanna.
All right, everybody saw this play. Anybody still watching noticed this play last night where Kevin Durant makes this fabulous play, and then as he's sort of backpedaling or turning, he looks and, Rihanna's sitting right there. Everybody in the arena knows Rihanna's there. But also, and the reason I'm going to say truthful, he doesn't remember staring down Rihanna, is there are 2 other people in the sideline. One, Rihanna's friend, who was clearly a LeBron lover and hating on the Warriors, and LeBron pal Jay-Z. So if you're going to stare down somebody, if you are Kevin Durant, you look at Rihanna, but you're not going to talk trash to Rihanna. You're going to give the head nod and say something to Jay-Z, noted LeBron pal, one of the most famous people in the world, truthful.
You could not be more wrong about this. It's disingenuous. That's because he knew where Rihanna was sitting. It was her friend who just a couple of moments earlier yelled out brick when he was at the free throw line.
So and
this is the same Kevin Durant who back in November of 2011 on Twitter said, the woman that I want to marry is Rihanna. Jeff Van Gundy screamed when Rihanna showed up. Guess what? Durant knew that she was there. He was staring at her.
Van Gundy screaming is what we probably really should have talked about. It's just the notion of Rihanna.
Stop the game, basically.
Jay-Z's still the headliner for me when he's in the house. What's next?
Russell Westbrook was blank for advertising that he was not watching the finals.
Well, that's what guys who are uninvolved now have to do. They have to get your attention on Twitter and say something about what it is they're doing. And Russell Westbrook did that. And I'm going to say Russell Westbrook was envious. He was watching, what is that, Sister Act or something? Envious because he's not there. Because he wants to be there. And Kevin Durant, his running mate for 8 years, is there. And he's putting on the performance of a lifetime in the finals. And Westbrook would rather do that than anything else. Envious, and understandably so.
By the way, it was Sister Act 2. What he was doing was overdoing it, because what we love about Russell Westbrook is that he cares. And here he's trying to show you, I don't care that I'm not in the finals, that it's Cleveland and Golden State. The real Russell Westbrook is taking a brick and throwing it at the TV or kicking the TV because he's not playing in the NBA Finals. For him to act like he doesn't care what's going on, come on. We know Russell Westbrook. He wants to be there.
Yes, he cared, and the emotion he was feeling was envy. Jealousy at the very least. I'm going to go further and go envy. What's next?
It was blank that JaVale McGee wore a Shaq hat to the game.
It was priceless. what we're, obviously they've had beef, and some of it became public to the point that somebody was asking that Shaq be fired or disciplined, or he got out of control, all right? But then he wears the Shaq hat in and shows a new side to JaVale McGee, one where there is self-deprecation. I sat with him a couple of nights ago when he started the game because he didn't really want to start, and he talked about having to adjust the time he took his energy drink. And he said this literally, but he had a little twinkle in his eye. Self-deprecation coming out of him. Priceless, Frank.
Yeah, I think he's...
I had to go to the glasses like TK. Because Tony says, oh, Nashville's going to ruin it. Tony, of course, only wants, like half the original 6 teams in, the ones that are, near I-95. And he thinks it was going to somehow ruin it that Nashville was in. These ratings, the #1 watched cable show on Wednesday night was Game 2, which was also the highest such game rating since 2002. People have clearly taken to PK Subban, Pekka Rinne, even though they're down 0-2, and the Nashville Predators, the Penguins always get ratings. TK refuting.
The Stanley Cup ratings have been taking off, eh? That's Canadian, by the way, Michael. That's me speaking Canadian. Because if organizations like Ottawa or Edmonton had made it, it would be a little bit different. Pittsburgh has some big stars. Nashville with PK Subban. Also, you have Carrie Underwood. So who's had a bigger impact in the finals? Is it Carrie Underwood or Rihanna? Both of them have had a huge role so far. And by the way, it beat out the Bachelorette. The Stanley Cup. Yeah, look
Anytime
at that.
you can beat out the
with
Bachelor
Rachel
or the Bachelorette, that's a great thing
Who
to
Durant,
hear.
by the way, dated. It always comes back to the NBA somehow. How about that?
That's it. We're taking one last break, but still to come. Chris Paul would reportedly strongly consider the Spurs. Could that really happen?
And was it fair for Mets manager Terry Collins to get the boot for arguing the ruling on this play?
There were a lot of strange plays last night. Plays that had to be overruled, overturned, gotten correct.
That's the same old
lot of
Mets
replay
right
stuff
there.
in Major League Baseball last.
What do you have there?
P3. It's meat, cheese, and nuts. I keep my protein interesting.
Oh, yeah, me too. I have cheese and these herbs.
Proven. Captain Morgan. Live like a captain. Please drink responsibly. Part of happy hour.
Time to get happy, people. Happy 65th birthday, Gary Bettman. The NHL Commission is presiding over a league whose success is no longer concentrated in a handful of markets. For his birthday, though, Bettman is hoping Nashville turns around this Stanley Cup final starting tomorrow so he can get 7 games out of this puppy. Frank, do you like all these small market and Rust Belt teams playing in this late in the season like this?
I think they've had a great playoff, and you know what? The ratings are up, and yet when he goes out on the ice to present the Stanley Cup, he gets booed more than Roger Goodell could ever dream of.
No matter what.
It's amazing.
I know. It's like Goodell. Happy anniversary, Derek Jeter. On this day 25 years ago, Jeter was drafted by the Yankees with the 6th overall pick in the draft. 3 of the 5 guys taken ahead of him had nice major league careers, but Jeter became one of the great players with the greatest franchise in the history of sports in America. And untouched by any kind of scandal, Jeter truly has been the golden boy of baseball for the last 25 years.
Oh, Captain, my Captain. When they introduced him to the media on a conference call, I was on that conference call.
Were you?
Michael, I remember thinking, this guy's never going to make it. He'll be a flash in the pan.
So much for your scouting instincts, Frank. Happy trails, Terry Collins. The Mets manager was tossed for arguing about this play yesterday. Umps originally ruled bat boy interference and gave the Mets an out on this foul pop, but then they reversed the call and Collins went nuts.
You know what? I think they took Mr. Met, they reassigned him, and made him the poor guy sitting there, and he screwed up a second time. Unbelievable. Only
I knew we were going to work our way
Only
somehow
the
to
Mets.
Mr. Met. I knew that was
Exactly.
coming up a second day in a row despite Tony's absence. No errors today. We are clean. Let's go to the big finish. Mark Stein reporting Chris Paul will strongly consider the Spurs in free agency. You think he'll end up in San Antonio,
You know
Frank?
what? I think either Derrick Rose or Chris Paul could end up there, but I do think this. San Antonio is going to do everything they can to try to move LaMarcus Aldridge. But Michael, come on. That's a lot of money that Chris Paul would be turning down from the
on
Clippers,
the table
right?
in L.A., yeah, it would be.
All right, the IOC is set to make 3-on-3 hoops a medal sport in 2020. Is that a good idea?
They stealing Ice Cube's idea? What's up with this? I mean, I know the Olympic gods like to take a sport and sort of morph it and change it and move it. 3-on-3, I could get it.
I want tug of war in the Olympics. Tug of war, that's the event.
We're going back to the ancient Olympics, ancient Greece. Charles Oakley rejected an opportunity to have charges dismissed from that confrontation at MSG. He wants to go to trial. Frank, is this a good decision?
You know what? We all love Charles Oakley. We've all moved on from this, except for one person, unfortunately, and that is Charles. I think he should just drop the thing. All right, Mike Vick tells Adam Schefter he'd like to coach in the NFL, working with young quarterbacks. Do you think someone's going to hire him?
I'm through predicting what people will do in the NFL, who they will work with and who they will not based on what they think of their character. Last one, Champions League final tomorrow, Juventus and Real Madrid. Who you got, Frank?
It's Gigi Buffon versus Ronaldo. I'm going with the Italian team, of course. All right, thanks for watching. Tony is back on Monday. I'm Frank Isola.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Have a great weekend, Knuckleheads. You can check us out on the ESPN app or Apple Podcast.
Happy 18th to my daughter. I got it in.